Everybody, happy Friday. Hope you're all having a good day. Yesterday, not our finest hour, not my finest hour anyway. Missed on a few spots. Had some right ideas, but mostly it was not a great day to come back to. Hopefully, we can turn it around today. It is my daughter's birthday, so happy birthday, Karina. I'm going up from LA to Santa Barbara to see her, so I'm going to do a quick show later probably a Starbucks up there on my way, and we can see you guys at 6 Eastern. But I thought right now I'd share for you my thoughts on the slate, and hopefully we won't have an overwhelming amount of news. I think it'll mostly come in the form of starting lineups later. I don't think it's going to come as much in the form of guys resting, but there will be a few that you might see out there, and there's some question marks. But let's get right into it. Excuse me, still got the illness going a little bit. Let's get right into it, and I'm going to share my screen and talk sort of through my thoughts on the slate on both DraftKings and Fanduel. And we'll start off with DraftKings, and then we'll talk about Fanduel. So here we go. Let's go game by game real quick. I feel like these are four sort of staples, but I feel like you could say any Clipper, any one or two Clippers, I think makes sense. I think LeBron makes a lot of sense. I think you could also say Luka makes sense as a spend up, but I'm going to go game by game real quick and say what I would say, what my thoughts are. I would, if I was playing a ton of lineups today, I would try to get a Toronto Raptor in most of my lineups. You can see when these two teams play, the pace should be fast and furious. And if you look at what they did last time, basically everybody exceeded value with the exception of Van Vliet in the last matchup. And that could easily turn to go back to Van Vliet. I'm expecting him to play tonight. These guys are better plays on FanDuel for the most part. But I think Gary Trent, Siakam, Anunoby, and Barnes are all in play. I think my favorite would go Siakam, Trent, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Barnes on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I think it's Anunoby 1, and then it's not maybe as necessary, but we'll get over there. Not especially interested at the prices for these guys on Charlotte on DraftKings, but I think you can get a low-owned Miles Bridges, and I think that it's a great spot for him. And you can see they just played. He put up 49.5 last time when these two teams played. It's a really good spot for him, so maybe we can try to attack that. I know that there was, the last game was an overtime game or whatever, but I still think that Miles Bridges is reasonable. Don't think it's where I want to go today with my plays. DeJounte Murray is always solid play. It's a fine matchup. He's expensive. I'd rather play the other expensive guys today. That's just the way I'm approaching it. But I also really like Devin Vassell. Devin Vassell is going to be a staple for some people today. I think that he, at 5K, it's very reasonable. You could see he's exceeded 30 in 4 of the 5 games in the situation. No Primo there to eat up any more extra minutes. And with Murray out, with Derek White gone, I think he makes a lot of sense. So Vassell's definitely a strong play. Kuzma, I'm saving mostly for DraftKings, for FanDuel, but I do think you can play him on DraftKings. 8,900 is expensive, but we know he can get there. We know he has a ceiling. So I think Kuzma would be my favorite play on Washington. And if you want to mix in other guys like KCP, that's, again, more of a FanDuel one for me where I need savings, maybe Kispert, but I'm not doing it personally. OKC, no real interest outside of Shea. And even that, I don't have a ton of interest in. So as of right now, it would be just Shea for me or nothing on OKC. On Indy, it gets interesting with Brogdon likely to be back tonight, and we're not 100% sure on that. If he's out, obviously open up everything we've been doing. But assuming that I'm sort of assuming he does play based on what I've heard so far. And if that happens, I just sort of lose interest in basically everyone here, with the exception of maybe a FanDuel play on a guy like a Batatse. I think you could play him on DraftKings too, but I just like other plays better. So that's where I'm at on that. I love this Houston-Orlando game, and I think there's a million ways you could go with stacking it or mini stacking it. I think Christian Wood is a strong play on both sites, 7,900 on DraftKings, 78 on FanDuel. I think that it depends on the starting lineup. It's really tricky to figure out what they're going to do with Eric Gordon, with Schroeder there now. Assuming that Gordon gets his 30 minutes, I would love to play him at 4K in a great matchup and they have played him. They really like him. They like what he does for the young guys. So if they continue to play him like that, I think he's a strong play. Jalen Green, look, it always could work out, but it's just a 5K. It's fine. We don't see him get there all that often, but again, he does have upside. 4,300 on FanDuel is probably where I'll use him, but not especially interested. But I do think, mixing in Porter, Wood being my favorite probably. And then it really depends on how the starting lineup shakes out. I think Şengün makes for a great large field play because you've got a team that plays too big, so they can play Wood and Şengün together more minutes than usual. So I actually like the idea of Şengün as a large field play. And if he starts, he won't be as sneaky, but I think this is an outside chance that maybe they start going with him at some point to be starting the rest of the way. I love the Orlando side of this on both sides. Wagner, Carter, Mo Bamba, even though with the limited minutes, 4,500 in a matchup where he could really just go nuts. Again, great plays on both sides. I think that right now I've got it ranked Carter 1, Anthony 2, Suggs 3, Wagner, Bamba 4, Wagner 5 on DraftKings, but all of them are in play, including Okiki, because they have given him some run lately. I don't think Okiki is where I want to go with it personally. I'd rather go with the other guys. And then you can always take the long shot at Terrence Ross approach. But I really think this is a game you want exposure to with the giant total, and a game that should stay close. And I just want to point out one more thing about Carter. If you look at his numbers when games, they don't play in a lot of games that stay close. You know what I mean? But last 10-point game against Denver, he puts up 53. Even in some of these blowouts where he's only playing 26 minutes, he's putting up 30 plus. These are 40 plus games, maybe even 50s in some cases, if they're not getting smoked, or in some cases, even smoking another team where you put up 42 against Portland. I just think there's a really good spot for all these guys, and I think you want to get a lot of exposure to this game. Miami, New York, not going to be able to get to anybody on Miami's side. Sure, you could argue they're good tournament plays because of that. Just take your pick then. I don't really have the best way would probably be Butler, but that's really all I got would be Butler on the Miami side. Not interested on this big slate. Julius Randle will be completely unowned, and it's a terrible matchup. But with their current roster, with no Kemba playing, it's kind of interesting. He's been over 56 in there, 55 and a half in every single game, and no one's going to play him at 97. I think that's pretty interesting. So while I prefer Siakam, on it's just because of the matchup and everything, Randall has kind of been the guy. So if this game is, going to stay close and tight, I could see Randall having a really, really big game here. I also like Alec Burks. I think that's going to be a pretty chalky play. Without Kemba, I think as he gets the minutes back in the 30s, if it's not Burks for any reason starting, or something different like Grimes, I think you could obviously switch over to Grimes, and I think you can absolutely take shots on Emmanuel Quickley. The problem is I don't love Quickley's price, but I do think there's enough room for him to get there. I just think that the price makes it a little bit less appealing to me. But again, I don't want to try and attack Miami too much, just noticing some pricing gaps because of the no Kemba stuff. All right, Philly, it's going to be hard for me to play anyone but Embiid, and I don't even know that I would do that compared to the other big guys, but neither will anyone else, and it's a great matchup, and Harden is probably going to come in and be a little deferential at first, is my guess, and I don't think you're going to see Harden shooting a bunch, so I think you could see Embiid go right back to his, high 60s to low 80s type of ceiling, and I think that's a really interesting spot. I also think we say the same thing every day. One of these guys at least will get there. Yesterday it was Russell to Towns to some extent. I think Edwards is probably the guy I would lean on today. Again, he's going to have a larger range of outcomes, but when he gets there, oh boy, does he get there. And I don't mind taking shots on any of these guys, but they would just be shots, including Patrick Beverley, who is a solid play, but I think I'd probably rather play Alec Burks given his new role, what we assume is his new role in New York. On Dallas, it's basically Luka or nothing for me. I am okay with Finney-Smith. I think we're going to get better value than that today, but the Clippers guys being better value, there's just a lot of them, so you have to try to get him right. But I do like Dallas here. I do like Luka here for Dallas quite a bit. And just a tough decision between he and LeBron. The $1,200 price gap has me leaning LeBron. But I do really like Luka in this matchup. And I think Donovan Mitchell's a great run back on the other side, as well as Gobert. I just don't think I'm going to end up getting to, based on the way that I'm building, because I'm focused on the Clippers and Lakers, and I'm focused on Orlando and Houston, as well as the Toronto-Charlotte game. So that's sort of why I'm not as much on that. And then I'm also into this game, but I don't know who I would really want to play from the New Orleans side of it. So I will probably let the New Orleans side of it lie, even though I will be playing a ton of, in whatever lineups I end up getting out there, Cam Johnson and Devin Booker will probably be in all my lineups today, realistically. I just think that he has too much control without Chris Paul there. You see him with 12 assists yesterday. It was interesting. I haven't looked at the assist prop yet today, but I would, if it's 7.5 or anywhere in that range, I would bet the over. Yesterday felt like a really easy one at 6.5. He did have 6 steals, so maybe you could say it's a little bit outlier, but again, look, this guy feels safe for like 50 tonight, assuming the game stays reasonably close. And if it doesn't, it's probably him doing a lot of the damage that makes it not. They really just run everything through him. I think you could take shots with Ayton. I think you could play some bridges on FanDuel, but overall, the guy for me is going to be Cam Johnson, and again, somewhat shooting reliant, but we saw him have a big game. He had actually 5 assists in that game too. He had a big game last night at 4,800, assuming that he's still starting. I think he's the better play in that high 4K range, other than maybe Alec Burks would be the only other argument I have in that range. Clippers and Lakers. This is going to be a weird one because I love the Clippers in their side of it. This one, Morris is probably a little more expensive than I want to play. Man is probably just meh. I really like Reggie Jackson. I like him better on FanDuel. I really like Zubac and Kennard, and I really like if you're not going to play one of those guys, I think you can argue even for Hartenstein in this type of matchup or Batum, but I think Batum would be the preferred one of those two. And I think that, you look at his last game, it was ugly because it was the second, the third game in 4 nights. Then he had the back-to-back before that. So I would take this Golden State game as maybe more of an indicator of how many minutes he might be able to play tonight. Just really does depend on how the game's flowing for the Clippers. But I like Batum at 4,100 as a guy who can possibly 7-8x his price value. And I really think that's a good way to go. And on the Lakers side, it's going to be LeBron for me. I like Westbrook on Fanduel at 7K. I think you could make an argument for him on DraftKings. I know the numbers haven't been pretty. We haven't seen that many games without Davis, but I think there's going to be a big performance from him in one of these games. And it's a long shot play for sure. But if you're making 150, maybe you put him in a couple of them. But I think that more he's the play on Fanduel. All right, let's jump over to Fanduel. This is sort of my general core, but there's a lot of ways to go. Again, Luka's easy to get to at 11.2. Maybe you want to do that. The turnovers and everything else. The fact that I can build like high mid-range guys makes it a little bit more appealing for me to do so. So that's what I'm doing. But I certainly wouldn't fault you for going Luka here. Fred VanVleet, another one at 8K that I think is just too cheap. But there's a lot of guys that seem too cheap on FanDuel, so it's a little tricky. All the Charlotte guys, by the way, and I'm just going to jump up to that game real quick. The Charlotte guys are just significantly cheaper over here. So maybe you could argue for playing some of these guys. Again, Siakam, another strong play on FanDuel as well. Bridges is the only one whose price went up. All the other guys are cheaper over here, but I'm still not finding myself loving any of the Charlotte stuff, even though I could be okay with like basically any of the plays from that game. But this is the core for me. Other guys to consider, obviously LeBron we mentioned, but again, if you're going to play LeBron at what even position do they have him at now? What is he? Where did they move him? Oh, I messed up here. I was like, wait, he should be a small forward. The 10-7, the discount between he and Luka not so strong over here. So I will go the Westbrook Luka route more over here. And again, I love Reggie Jackson, love Cole Anthony's price. I think there's a really high ceiling for Cole Anthony in that game on both sides. And then I want to get some Houston exposure, which would lead me to maybe playing a guy, throwing in Christian Wood into this lineup or something like that. Love Kuzma, obviously he should be a cash game staple. I think Mo Bamba's upside is greater realized on FanDuel because of the shot blocking upside. And if he has one of those 3 block, 2 steal games, you're basically already going to get home. And we've seen a couple outlier negative games. We've seen him also play minutes at times. 4,500 just feels a little too cheap for his upside against Houston. So this is sort of the core I'm rolling with. I will be doing my 5 and 5 video. I'll post my plays later on truedfs.com. I'll post my bets up there. And yeah, let's crush it tonight, guys. Sorry if it's going to be hard to do it from the road today. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to make this work. But we want to be here for you guys no matter what. And I will be in Discord up till lock as usual. So good luck to everybody out there. And we will see you at 6 and see you at the top of leaderboards later on, hopefully. Good luck, everybody.